There are many reasons why columns exist. Most people don't have time to think about stuff, and you should be, so you give them an opinion that you can either agree with or disagree with, or third option, start a conversation in a pub going, did you see what Caitlin Moran wrote yesterday? So that's one of the things that you're paid to do, is to give people, something to talk about, a kicking off point for a conversation. There's a beautiful creative element to writing a column that you can sit there and go, what would happen if we tried this? Why don't we try this? Is this a different way of looking at something that happened in the past? And just sort of, giving people in a 5-minute break while they're eating their breakfast, just a chance to just for a minute imagine what the future could be like and whether they'd like to go for that or not.
Over time, you've taken on more and more subjects that probably in your earlier writings you wouldn't have,
Yes.
And you're probably one of the very few writers that will still do the otter.
Yes.
And Syria.
Yes.
Are you more interested in tackling bigger subjects, or are you just as interested in the
I think both are equally important, and I think it's very hard. It's very easy to underestimate how important it is to just write something that's funny and that cheers people up. Because the key thing, most of what I write about is equality, how we need equality. So we will not get richer until we have equality, because this is a very tiny planet with a lot of problems, and the biggest resource that we have isn't oil or gold or uranium. It's people's brains, and the more brains we can get involved in solving the world's problems, then the quicker we will have our solutions. It's in our interests for the world to be more equal. And the whole point of once we've achieved equality is to remember the primary reason why we exist, which is joy. We are here for such a short period of time. There's the void before and the void afterwards. We're here for a tiny little flicker, and we should be experiencing as much joy as possible. So, to be able to write a column that makes people just for 1 minute just go, wow, what an incredible world this is. That's quite funny. Yes, I do fancy Benedict Cumberbatch. These are just as important as talking about politics.
We were talking earlier about last week. Politicians, for example, it's been very popular for the last few years, probably since the expenses scandal.
Yeah.
To portray politicians as a bunch of thieving scumbags who are on the make. And then last week happens and suddenly you start thinking, oh, maybe there's a more optimistic view of all of this, and that maybe these are good public servants, but that we only ever focus on the negative. Is that a disease that the media sometimes suffers from?
Well, absolutely, and the whole thing is about cynicism. Where we have become very cynical. The tone is relentlessly cynical, and it's like, well, why do people become cynical? It's a teenage thing that you do when you know that you don't know that much. You put on your armor to protect yourself from accusations of not knowing that much and being innocent. But the problem with wearing armor is you cannot grow in armor, and you cannot dance in armor, and eventually your cynicism just leaves you pinned to the spot. And we can see that has happened exactly with talk about politics in America, in Europe, in the UK now. We've come to a post-factual age where we're just want entertainers and hucksters who shout the loudest to be the people who are representing us. We've stopped reporting how well the system actually works for us, because it's got to the point where if your child came downstairs now and said, "Mother, I've decided I would like to go into politics," you would treat them as if they had just come downstairs and gone, "Mother, I've decided I would like to become a massive pervert." And it's taken us all of human history to get to the point where we have a representative democracy with people from a local area representing people and being servants of the people. That's a beautiful idea. If we had the best people and the best brains on the job, people like Joe Cox, this would clearly be a better country. The thing is, there are lots of MPs like Joe Cox.
There's a lot of people who've talked about leaving Twitter. I think a lot of them who've done that then came back.
Yes.
2 weeks later.
Yes.
But
everyone loves Huff, so that's fine.
But beyond that, again, back to last week, this level of hate, the trolling for our children, etc., this, as we saw, is pretty serious stuff.
Social media often runs like a computer game with people just fighting. People go, "Yeah, I won the internet." The fact that there's a phrase "I won the internet" tells you everything you need to know about the internet and the gender balance at the moment. Whenever I do talks to younger girls, it's like the key thing you've got to do is go in there and learn how to program. Over 90% of the programmers are male. This is like if we knew in 20 years' time the universal language of this planet would be Chinese and only men were learning it, and women would be locked out of the conversation. The way that we communicate who we think we are will largely be predicated by the technology that we use. And if women aren't in there inventing it and seeing things from a women's point of view, it will again be an entirely male-dominated world.
Why did it take so long for this third wave of feminism to come?
It's crackers, isn't it? I do blame the Spice Girls. What had happened is that people stopped using the word feminism and they said girl power instead. And when the Spice Girls were asked about how they felt about being a woman and politics and and progress and stuff, they went, "No, we're not feminists, but we're even girl power." And the problem with girl power is that compared to feminism, which is a legitimate movement, with solid aims and legal aims, which should bring in legislation and a history and a way of debating these things, which is inclusive and includes everybody and has solid objectives, Girl power, on the other hand, just meant being friends with your friends and buying Spice Girls records. And that notably fucked us for about 10 years. So that was basically it. I mean, it's really weird, kind of like, I'm just reading a biography of Mary Wollstonecraft now, who wrote Vindication for the Rights of Women, and you know, it's just amazing. She's basically saying the same kind of shit that I'm saying now, then, and everyone was like, oh, and then when I wrote How to Be a Woman, people were still going, oh, and that was 200 years later. We forget these things really quickly, which is why it's always good to keep being chatty about the feminism. You know, don't leave it for a couple of years and just think, yeah, I'll be all right for a couple of years. You've always got to be on the feminism. You've got to be riding it like a little horse, just kind of like, come on, let's keep going. One of the problems that we have on the left and being progressive is we're like, well, if it's not perfect and if it doesn't include everybody straight away, then fuck it. We will trash these people. Kind of like, I'm holding out for a feminist Jesus who'll do everything. When you're tidying up the house, you don't do it all in one go. You know, you just start with the sink and work your way around to the toilet. That's what it's like in progress.
Do you think that maybe this kind of world that we live in now, where we give away so much content for free and people expect so much for free, is actually perhaps stopping more working class people getting involved in media and having...
You know, if people cannot pay their rent, they will not enter that industry. What you will get is middle-class kids who are supported by their parents, who can afford for them to be supported while they go and do a free internship or get a foot on the ladder. If you're a working-class kid, if you take that free internship, you're still going to have to work a full-time job in order to pay your rent. And immediately, within a year, a massive gap has opened up. You're going to see half the working-class kids dropping out. It's the same all across the creative industries. It's the same in television, you know, it's the same in film, it's the same in theatre, it's the same in acting. We're just not seeing working-class voices and kids coming through. And again, you know, I could talk about the unfairness of that until the cows come home, but it comes down to the fact that we're just going to make things very boring. Things already are very boring. There are no working class bands anymore. You can't afford to be in a band. You can't afford rehearsal space. You're not allowed to be on the dole anymore. All these voices are missing. It's the same in television. It's the same in acting. We're not hearing these voices. And it's fucking boring.